Okay, it is 6 o'clock and we have a full schedule and quite a few people today. So what I'm going to ask is that everybody that's not speaking mute their phone. If you're on a telephone, it's *6. If you're on a telephone and you want our attention to ask a question, it's *9. And *6 also unmutes you to speak. Okay? With the amount of people that are here, it's liable to get very confusing. All right, so again, we are at 6 o'clock, 6:01, and I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is the approval of minutes from the March 9th meeting. I'd entertain a motion to move forward with that.
You are unmuted.
Do we have that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, who was that?
I just said aye. It's Allie.
Okay. Are you in favor or are you opposed?
I'm in favor. I said aye to being in favor, but it's delayed slightly. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, motion passed. Additions and deletions. We have a request to add a letter from the Historical Society, and I think I saw Charlie Marchant speak to that, at least at one point. But we can go forward on the letter if he's not there. There's also to move an addition for the fire chief to speak about an issue with a older piece of equipment, so we'll add that. And we also have here people from the Deerfield Valley Broadband Coalition to speak about an issue that started out before COVID and didn't move any further than 1 or 2 meetings. And the person that was assigned to that no longer with us. So Andy Snelling, I think, has the most knowledge from the town's perspective, and he's here for that, along with another issue later on down the line. So I guess we'll move into members of the public, and we'll go with the Deerfield Valley Broadband Association first. So which of you would like to speak to that? Describing what it is, what you're asking.
I guess that's me.
Okay, Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Jane Douglas. I'm the Newfane representative to the Deerfield Valley Communications Union District, is the technical name of it. It's also known as DV Fiber, is the not-for-profit corporation that was formed under that name. So if you want to find out more about us, we are on the internet, a website that says dvfiber.net if you want to check this out more. But yeah, well, last year with the pandemic, apparently the DV Fiber had started up last spring. And I guess you guys had heard some or talked to someone about it at some point. Last September, I ran into Emily Long, who is the representative from this area to Montpelier. And she talked me into getting Newfane interested because Newfane had not joined. And so I did, and I was appointed as the representative to the governing board of DVCD. We were formed under the laws of the state of Vermont in order to bring broadband to all the people in Vermont who do not have good, reliable internet connection. All the cable companies, they don't want to spend all their money running one wire up to the top of a hill to connect up one house. They'll never make enough profit off that for them to bother to do it. So governors for the last decade have been promising broadband for all, and this is the way the state of Vermont is going to get it done. We are essentially a not-for-profit corporation. We're doing this with grant money from the federal government, from the state, from anywhere we can find grant money in order to pay for it, running all this wire. It will be the high-grade optical fiber, which is the best connection you can possibly get to the internet. And our initial focus will be on connecting up everyone who does not have a connection now. The town of Newfane, 72% of the town has access to the Comcast cable, but the other 28% did not. So that will be the focus in Newfane at first, but eventually it will be available for everyone. The town of Townshend, I checked the stats on our initial plan that was done last spring, and it looks like about 60-some% of Townshend has access to the cable. Whether or not they're all hitched up to it or not, we can't really tell. So the real crux of it is at Christmas time, I was talking to Chris Angel and Phyllis Trier, people in Townshend, who hadn't really heard anything about this strange group I had become part of. And so I thought, well, I'll rattle a few trees and see if someone in Townshend is interested enough to want to be the representative.
Okay, I think Jane's feed stopped. While we're waiting for that to come back, Andy, you were part of something to do at least with the beginning stages of this.
Whitingham.
Oh, wait a minute.
Oops.
You froze, Jane.
Yes, the internet here is terrible. Oops, great way to say that, right?
Yeah.
So the towns that we're doing, we are now getting bids from vendors to begin that work, hopefully this summer, and lining up the money. The money is coming in. The state of Vermont is very, very interested in pushing this forward, and the federal government is now coming up with much more money. So it'll be millions of dollars, and I'm just floored at how much money it's going to take, but we can do it. So Townshend needs to get involved if you want to be part of the group. You're almost the only town in Windham County that is not represented on the governing board right now. We have 21 towns, everyone from Putney, down, like I said, Stamford. We have actually signed a memorandum of cooperation with the Bennington group, so that we are pretty much going to move ahead as one very large group of about 29 towns, which is all of the southernmost counties in Vermont. It'd be really nice if you guys could join us. We need all the clout in Montpelier we can get to get all the money we can get out of them.
Time that you have contacted the select board or the town of Townshend?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is this the first time that you have contacted the town of Townshend or the town of Townshend select board?
Me personally, yes. I'm not sure if you were contacted last spring. This all was starting up just when the COVID hit, and everything kind of fell apart for a lot of the sections back then. I don't know. Did anyone talk to you before?
Hang on just a second. That's what I have Andy waiting to give some of the background on it, and hopefully that will clarify some questions, or at least give you some more questions for the other two that are here. Andy, go ahead with what you know about the situation.
The town of Townshend participated very actively in the initial broadband survey and feasibility study. The Planning Commission actually took the lead on that, trying to get as many people to provide survey information as possible. And as the feasibility study went along, it became pretty clear that some of the areas served by Southern Vermont Cable were considerably better off as far as service than many of the southern towns in the county. The original process then went on to the beyond the feasibility to the business plan portion of it. And as the business plan portion was coming to fruition, the Windham Regional Commission basically turned over the project to the then formed Deer Valley Communication Union District, which started out initially, I believe, with 5 towns in the southern part of the county. One of the areas of concern from the feasibility study and some of the initial projections was that, given that the idea of a communications union district is to serve the areas where there are existing least service and not to quote overbuild. By overbuild, I mean run competitive cable with other existing providers, hence splitting possible revenue. Looking at that, both Newfane, Brookline, Townshend already had considerably better service than places like Whitingham, Marlboro, and Stamford, which is in Bennington County. And as we talked about it, it became clear that any new additional cable from any communications union district, from the Deer Valley Communications Union District, could be 5 to 6 years before anything would happen in the northern towns in the county. And I exclude Athens, Rockingham, and I think Grafton, which are very well served by Vermontel. And so they really have no interest, I don't think, in joining a new venture, because they already have very high rate of penetration with cable and internet broadband. And looking at that, there's a lot more money coming into it now, both on the state level and also from the federal level. It's going to be a large priority. It is an expensive undertaking. Runs about $30,000 per mile. And so the idea of getting enough people along any given mile of road to subscribe to the service, I don't know what number they're currently using. I think they were looking at around 10. They needed to have 10 people sign up per mile, which makes it very difficult in some of the more rural areas, because it's going to be costly to get there and you're not going to have a lot of houses. The cost that I've seen so far for internet service is competitive with what we currently are getting from Comcast in the area. But obviously for the places that don't have good cable access, it really is not a price issue. It's more a matter of, can they get availability and when? One important aspect to keep in mind is that the communications union districts as formed under Vermont do not incur any liability back to the town government. They are independent, and so by joining, you're not exposing the tax base to any debts incurred by the communications union district. And that's important because some of you are aware, back when Burlington tried to do this, I guess a number of years ago, it was probably 10 years ago, they ended up basically really with major losses that had a major effect on the Burlington city tax base. The question I guess I have is whether we might be better off if we wanted to pursue something more for the more northern. I think there's like 7 northern towns that aren't in the Deer Valley Communications Union District, whether it might be better to join with those and form a different communications union district that might get us more improvement in the northern towns sooner. But at this point, I don't really know.
Yeah, right now we do have, Jamaica, Putney, everyone around Townshend, Wardsboro, Dover, it is a considerable amount of the area. Yeah, it is good to point out the fact that the town will have to put no money into this venture. There is no taxes, no fees required of the town. It is, I'm not sure. I believe Londonderry has joined us. Winhall has. So we are becoming a much larger group and encompassing much more of the area. As for availability for everyone in the town, the fact that we have to run the wire past your house is going to make it feasible for you to attach to it eventually. The wiring is going to take time. The first towns are probably going to be this year. You know, for Newfane, I was figuring we're probably in either 23 or 24. It will be out of ways. What was the other thing I was thinking to say? Certainly at this point, in terms of the planning, you know, I'm not sure about Grafton, Athens. I know the VTEL has a separate group over there. So I don't know whether you want to be involved with that one or not. That I'm not sure. You know, Stephen John is the vice chair of our group, and he was supposed to get here, but he had a conflict, and I'm not sure whether he's going to make it or not. But he would certainly be able to answer more of those questions. He knows more about the business side of it. All I know is that there are enough people in my town who can't get internet. When Southern Vermont Cable sold out to Comcast, you know, everyone got excited thinking that Comcast would wire everybody up. And one person I know sent in a request to Comcast, and they told him that for $33,000, they'd be happy to wire him up. They were going to charge him everything that it was going to cost to attach him to their cable. With the DV fiber, we're playing with grant money, with federal money. There is no capital outlay particularly that we have to put out to do this, so that the charges we'll be charging for each subscriber will simply be ongoing maintenance charges. So it's a lot smaller capital outlay on our behalf in order to get this thing going.
Okay. Rob, since you had the first question, do you have any questions with what you've heard?
Not really a question, I have a comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Peter Shumlin, his whole entire running basis was on broadband throughout the whole entire state, and here we are now 2 governors away, and we don't have anything that the guy ran on.
Actually, the first CUD is the one in Essex County, ECUD. They are up and running. That's
fine. I'm saying that man ran on statewide broadband, not in Essex Junction, statewide.
Well, that is the end result. That is our goal.
Okay.
The process is not, it's not swift. I mean, running these wires is going to take a lot of time. There's access to the poles, things like that.
Until I'm 80 to get it broadband in the whole entire state, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the tail end of that.
44 years old, it shouldn't take until I'm 80 to get broadband in the whole entire state.
No, we're estimating out about 5 years. And if things go well and the money comes in, it may be faster. But I think there is, the only good thing to come out of this pandemic was that people realized that the 2 things you absolutely have to have in a house are electricity and internet. If we want our children to be able to go to school remotely, we want them to go to college remotely, you have to have an internet connection to your house. And if you want a home business, you have to have internet in your house as well. There's just no small business that can run without a web presence. You know, it really is a fact of life, a necessity of life today, and this is a way for us to get it to everyone who doesn't have it now.
Okay, Allison, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, I was wondering if there's any comparison to Starlink or other types of internet that might be available now or soon. Like, just curious about like the speed of it and if, you know, it would compare to some other sort of program that might be available through the same network that you have and that you're representing, Jane.
The speed of the optical fiber we're going to install is the fastest on the market today. It will be the fastest internet connection you can get on a fiber. Starlink is a kind of a different animal. Starlink is, you know, Elon Musk's little experiment with putting up thousands of satellites. In theory, he's pretty fast. In theory, the connection is great. What's not known currently is what happens when you get more and more subscribers on it. Each of those miniature satellites can only handle so many subscribers at one time. Not really known. It's very expensive to join Starlink. The equipment is about $900 that you have to pay for and you have to install yourself. So it's definitely a different kind of a setup. It's something that's questionable. I think Starlink would be fabulous if you're in Alaska or way out in the middle of nowhere. But here, for us to have a really good, reliable, rapid internet connection, optical cable is the way to go.
Well, thank you, Jane and Andrew. Really appreciate you.
Any other comments from board members, Haley or Steve? Okay.
You are unmuted.
No, sure, when I'm all set, like Rob, I'll be 80 years old before it makes it to Acton Hill, so it doesn't help me at all.
The thing to get it going is that you need to appoint a representative from your town to go to the governing board and, you know, get your input into how this is going. You know, we're going to be running things, and if you're not part of the running, I'm not sure how that's going to work. You know, we're connecting up with the systems around and beside us as we go.
Okay.
It's certainly get in touch with me and I'll get whoever in touch with Steve and John if you want more info. Go look on the internet. It's dvfiber.net. And there's the whole story. There's a good deal of information about the history so far. It's going to be tough going, and finding someone to be your representative is always the first step. So,
You know, we'll discuss that and see where we go with it. Of the other two people that signed on is Carol and Roger. Do you have anything to add to what Jane said?
If I could, I'm thinking about this in the manner of rural electrification when it happened back in the 30s in Vermont. You know, it was difficult for the towns to do this on their own, and they did exactly what is happening now with broadband. I do run a business from my home on the internet, and it can be spotty. It's difficult at times. I think for the economic benefit going forward for the town, this is going to be vital. If you're going to have a small business in town, you're going to need to be connected to the internet, and this is going to provide opportunity for economic benefit. And I think the town should think of it that way. That, I mean, you wouldn't cut off electricity, and this is becoming the same thing. It's something that's really needed. I do have internet here through Consolidated. Options are better. Options make you're able to have some price competition, a little bit of capitalism, which would help. So yeah, I'm looking forward to how this develops, and I fully support the town going and at least exploring this going forward. We can always opt out later if it turns out we don't like it.
Well, I think unless any of the other board members have a change and want to do something different, I think we'll take your information, give it a couple of weeks to discuss it and see where we want to go and what options we have with appointments for people, and then we'll get back to you probably through Carla. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Take care now. Okay, so the next order of business here is the fire department. Under members of the public, the fire chief is here to discuss an issue about older piece of equipment. Glenn, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Wanted to address the select board on our brush 2. For anyone who's unaware, we received that truck from a town down in Massachusetts. Like I'm getting an echo.
Is it still echoing? Irv, can you hit *6? Okay. Did that take care of it? That took care of it. Go ahead, Glenn.
On your end. So it was probably about 6 years ago. We received the truck. It basically was free to us, other than paying the trucking to get it up here. And then we took on, we purchased another engine, a used engine from West Dummerston Fire Department. Basically as an insurance policy on our oldest engine that was due to be replaced last year. So that truck ended up, the highway department was nice enough to let us park it up at the highway garage, and it's been up there for a couple of years, taking up their space. We rarely gets out on a call. And our thought is, we actually talked, the members of the department discussed the probability of getting rid of it, and the vote was to let it go. But it does belong basically to the town of Townsend. It was gifted over to the town of Townsend because they hold the insurance policies and own the rest of the trucks. So we would like the select board to give us a decision when they're ready. If we could proceed with, attempting to sell the truck. I'm not sure how much we'll get for it, considering we got it for free. But that's.
I would make a motion to allow the Townsend Volunteer Fire Department to come up with a price for the brush truck number 2 that is not being used for auction at the highest price, with a retainer of whatever Glen feels is suitable.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
You are unmuted.
Second.
Okay. Motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, and I will abstain due to my position on the fire department. Motion carried. So let us know, Glenn, what you think fair price for that is, and we'll get either a sealed bid or however to get rid of it.
I would like to see it with a sealed bid and a known limited bid of it.
Okay.
Before.
That's the way I took your motion in the first place. Does anybody disagree with that? We'll do this by sealed bid, and we'll get a minimum what it's worth or what the fire department thinks it's worth before proceeding. Okay?
Okay, I will, I'll work on that. They're not extremely common, but they are out there. I'll try to get an idea of what if there is a going rate for them, and if not, then we'll figure out a price and we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Okay, we'll move on to warrants. Rob, go ahead.
Make a motion to pay the warrants, starting with number 1, payroll, in the amount of $11,738.42. Number 2, payroll tax, the amount of $4,937.36. Number 3, the general fund school, the amount of $8,085.
Sorry, that should not be school. That should just be general fund.
Okay. I will amend my first motion, or not my first motion, but the third motion of the general fund. School to be general fund, the amount of $8,085.30. Number 4, in the highway fund, in the amount of $9,229.87. Number 5, in the equipment fund, in the amount of $546.62.
You are unmuted.
For the amount of $34,537.57.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Is there any discussion on the any of the 5 warrants? Hearing none, all those in favor of paying check warrants 1 through 5 for a total of $34,537.57. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carried 5-0. Okay, highway report.
You are unmuted.
Well, mud season has started. We haven't had any major issues. We've had several roads that have opened up in sections. We are addressing those on a daily basis to keep up with it. And there is some rain in the forecast towards the end of the week, which will actually help us get some more frost out of the ground. So we will be dealing with this on a day-to-day basis until we get through mud season. And that's about it for right now.
Okay. Is there any questions for Steve?
Yes.
Go ahead, Rob.
One would be sand. Where do we stand with our 4,500 yards that we budgeted for in
You
the
are
sand?
unmuted.
Currently remaining for sand is 2,100 yards. Remaining for salt, 51 tons.
We've done very well.
Yes, we have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Steve? Okay, we'll move on then. There's no clerk's report today. The town treasurer report is 700 and wish my glasses would make sense for me. Let's see, $783,635.14 in the municipal investment fund, and the checking account is $30,000. All right. Next thing, we have a letter from the Historical Society, and it's in your packet. But basically, the Historical Society is asking us to take the Leland and Grace Seminary documents that are held in the town clerk's safe and give them to the Historical Society so that they can be available for research purposes and make general availability to the public. And I don't see Charlie here. I thought he was here at one point, but the letter, it does explain more of the situation.
I would like to make a motion that allows the Historical Society to access these specific documents for their purposes.
Do you mean access or transfer? They're asking
You are unmuted.
specifically to transfer the collection.
To transfer the collection.
Okay, so we have a motion to transfer the collection. Do we have a second?
We have a second.
You have a second. Okay, is there any discussion about this?
Yes.
Go ahead.
My question would be the exact thing of transfer, or are we giving them two of them? Are we still retaining initial information of what is there, or are we just giving them everything and we have no copy of what is left?
In reading the letter, it's that they want the entire collection to be available.
And what would be the benefit to them to having it as opposed to us having it?
I think the biggest benefit is that it would be more accessible to the public.
They're not accessible to the public the way it is right now?
No, they're locked in the safe. Town clerk safe.
If they're in the safe, they're in the safe for a reason, is what my point is. And if they want to have a copy of them, I understand it, but I don't understand why we would take something out of the safe and transfer it somewhere else and not retain the copy that we have.
Okay. Well, I think that's a valid question. And we probably should have somebody from the Historical Society speak to that before we move forward with this.
I just feel like it's in the safe for a reason, and it would be good for us as a town to keep a copy of it in the safe.
Okay.
Not really. And if they want a copy of what we have, that's fine.
Okay. Well, we have an active motion on the floor. So, Allison, are you willing to amend this or change the motion to allow for it to be tabled?
Sure, we can table this to further discussion if you guys think that it's not appropriate for us to take something out of the safe and give it to the public. If you guys think that is worth discussing more in the future, we can come back to it next meeting. That's fine with me.
So you're retracting your original motion?
Correct.
Okay. So unless there's an objection to it, I think what we'll do is have Carla contact the Historical Society and have somebody here next time to discuss this and answer that question that Rob has about that information.
I just would like to keep whatever is in the safe, and I have no problem with other people having knowledge of what's there. It's just, I think that we need, as a town, to keep, if it went in there for a reason, it went in there because somebody else thought it was important, and I don't think it's up to us to take it out of it.
Okay. Valid point. All right, so we'll move on from that. Carla, would you contact Charlie and ask him to be here to discuss what exactly it is he wants or they want? Okay. COVID update is pretty much the same static thing. They're saying that they will hit their goal before May 1st of at least opening the vaccine up to everybody to register. You may register when your age band is called, but it might be up to 2 months before you get it. They want to have everything back to normal by the 4th of July. To me, the math doesn't make any sense, but we'll see what they do. It also goes to our going back to public meetings, in-person meetings, and it's coming closer. Let's put it that way. The next item that we have on the agenda is the Windham Pinnacle Association's letter of support. Now, originally, I had spoken about this last time and said that, or made inference to an executive session, simply because we didn't have all the information. We have apparently received all the information. To my determination, it really does not warrant an executive session because there is nothing legally we can do to intervene in this sale. The only thing they're asking for is a letter of support. There is a draft of what that draft has just been what they were requesting with our information plugged into it. It's just an idea. It's not set in stone. So we're here to discuss whether we're interested in giving them a letter of support for their project or not. I guess what the best way to handle this is to put the motion on the floor to move forward with this, and in discussion flesh out the details. So I'd entertain a motion to accept or to produce a letter of support to the Pinnacle Association for the just over 48 acres of land that's in Townshend as part of their larger project that encompasses, I guess, Brookline, some in Westminster, etc. Is there a motion to proceed?
Are you creating a motion, Sherwood, or would you like somebody to potentially create one?
No, I'm asking for a motion.
I would like to create a motion that allows the Pinnacle Association to accept our letter as is going forward.
Okay. Motion's on the floor. Is there a second?
I second, yes.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Is there discussion relative to this issue?
This has nothing to do with the state. This has nothing to do with the government. This is nothing more than the Windham Hill Pinnacle Association, which is a private entity. So we're basically going to start supporting private entities to buy a piece of property wherever they may be. We have no bearing of whether these people can buy it or can't buy it. We are not a real estate agent. We are not promoting, or we should not be promoting, like subject or like private sales. If the state and the government want to buy stuff, then yes, we should be able to chime in. Past that, we don't have any jurisdiction. We don't have any say, and they're looking for us to basically say, okay, cool, we support them buying that land. Look, they're going to buy it whether we support them or not. There's plenty of people in this land or in this area that want us to support them buying whatever it is that they want to buy. That doesn't mean that we need to support that. It's called, if you have the money, go buy it. If you don't have the money, you're not buying it. And I'm all for conservation, but I'm for like state and government conservation, not just private entity conservation. I live very close to this, and so do many people, and we've used it for many years. And now you can only hunt on it. You can't four-wheel drive or do anything else on it like the rest of their land. That's like cutting my foot off and telling me that, you know, you go ahead and walk on the land. I'm all set with it.
Okay. Is there any other comment while we're in discussion?
Please, somebody else say something.
Okay. I guess what I would have to say about it is Rob's point is extremely valid. We are not going to gain anything for the town. Having our support for this project is not going to gain anything for the town. And I think that there are other places that our support is more valid and necessary than this private organization. And I guess that's all I'll say to it. If there's anybody else that has an other comment to add to the discussion, go ahead.
I agree with Rob. I do think that is a valid point that we, you know, I think we do need to think twice about not necessarily getting in the middle of this, and that they're going to try to buy this regardless of our letter. That's very true. And I do. Rob's comment makes me think, you know, what kind of door that opens going forward of just kind of giving support anywhere where someone asks. So thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. And I'm glad that you are being objective and looking at it like that, because there has been other people that their land is semi cut off by what is going on with what they have for ideas of conservation, and everybody's idea of conservation can be a little different than the normal. So it is what it is. I don't
Right.
think.
I mean, ultimately, I think it's a wonderful thing to have more accessibility to land and trails. And, you know, I am not a four-wheeler person, so that, you know, doesn't offend me. But I don't know. I think there's more to think about than just
Well,
what I initially thought.
Another part of it is that we just got into talking with Glen from the fire department about a brush truck. Well, if you only have walking paths, how are you going to mitigate fire or suppress fires in anything like that if you have walking trails? If you have no four-wheeling trails, no logging trails, nothing of that, how are you going to access the land? I mean, the fire department is not going to go in with a set of hedge clippers and try to trim the trail to suppress a fire.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other comment before we call this to a vote? Seeing none or hearing none, all those in favor of supporting the letter signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
And I will vote with the majority. So we will not move forward with that letter of support. Okay. Thank you for your comments. Very much appreciated. All right. So we have an appointment that was holding over from the last meeting. And this was for grand juror. We wanted to make sure that Maggie Bills wanted to continue with that position. We've got that information back. She says she does. So I entertain a motion to appoint Margaret Bills as the town's grand juror.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of appointing Maggie Bills as the town's grand juror representative signify by saying aye.
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 Okay.
I guess I'm just confused of what the grand juror's job is. That might be a very stupid question.
No, there isn't any stupid questions. The grand juror's job is to set, when there's a superior court call for a grand jury, and the state's attorney requests in a criminal trial before they present it to an actual jury, a hearing of the evidence. And what a grand jury does is listens to the evidence and renders their opinion as to whether the state's attorney has enough evidence to proceed to trial with an individual case. That's the primary function that they have. They are not utilized very much. State of New Hampshire, they're utilized pretty much on any criminal case there is. State of Vermont, it's only when the state's attorney wants to air what's going on and see that he or she may have enough evidence to take it to trial. Did that answer your question, Haley?
Yes, and she is qualified to do this. I guess I just haven't done my.
She's been the grand juror for years.
Okay, thank you.
Been in the position for a long time. Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded. We've had discussion. All those in favor of appointing Margaret Bills to the grand juror's position signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, opposed? Abstentions? 5-0. All right, one piece of business we have. Elaine, we appointed last time Elaine Myers at the request of Eileen Fahey to fill the Howard, what is it, the Howard
Legacy Fund.
Howard Legacy Fund. Well, apparently, Mrs. Meyer, according to her son, is not capable of taking that position on. So we will have to fill that again. We're researching somebody to take care of that.
Is Maggie Bills already on it?
What's that?
Maggie Bills already on it.
I don't believe so. Carla, do you have the list of who's on it? Eileen Fahey.
Barbara Bedortha and Elaine Meyer.
Yeah.
I don't have Maggie Bills on the Howard Legacy Fund.
I would nominate Maggie Bills to be on the Legacy Fund. I know she would do very well on it and knows quite a few of the people in the area that would be in need of it, and I think she would be a valuable asset for it. So I would nominate Maggie Bills and hope she takes it.
Okay. Is there any discussion about Maggie Bills taking on that position? Okay. So, Rob, is that in the form of a
That's a motion.
There you go. Thank you.
Added to it.
All right. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion about Maggie Bills taking this position if she accepts? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. And I'll vote with the rest of them. 5-0 on that. And we'll see if she accepts that position. The next thing we have, and Andy has been very patiently waiting for the next article to deal with the West Townsend Village Center designation from the Planning Commission. Andy, go ahead.
Well, actually, I'm going to turn that one over to Brandon Canavari, who is here to speak to that.
Okay. Brandon?
So believe about a month ago, I received an email from Richard Amore at the state, who sits on the Village Center board. He had been contacted by Mary Vinton from the West River Community Project. They run the West Townsend store, and she was looking to apply for a Better Places grant, but that grant is not available unless you already have Village Center designation. Apparently, they are looking to build a pavilion that's adjacent to the property, or to the building, I should say. So Richard gave her some other possible grant opportunities. We spoke to her like after that and reached out, and they're looking to not only do that possibly by July, but they have a bunch of other projects that having Village Center designation in place and having access to some of the grants and tax credits that are available would help them move forward with some of those projects. So that's kind of what really started the conversation around trying to gain Village Center designation for West Townsend. As part of the process, we had to bring this issue before the select board to see if you would support it or support the idea, and also see if it's worth us moving forward to try to put that in place for the Village of West Townsend.
Okay, Brandon, can you explain to the board what this designation is, what it can be used for? I know the center of town, Townsend, has the designation. And it's not something that we can extend from the town center out to West Townsend, or we have to have an individual designation.
Yes, it is. So there's 3 areas within Townsend that would be considered different designations, and there's very specific boundaries, and part of them relate to the original historic settlement of each individual village. They also have to have what are called essentially anchors. So it focuses on sort of businesses and civic organizations, less on residential. So for the Village of West Townsend specifically, the area that it would encompass would essentially be kind of probably down to where there's a duplex property and apartment, and probably over to where Al Litchfield's business is right there. So it really just kind of be the center. And it encompasses kind of all those properties, the church, but really it has to have certain specific points. Also, it has to have accessibility. You have to easily be able to walk to within the boundaries for it to be considered a village center designation. So that's kind of how it's outlined as far as, boundaries and how everything is laid out and what's considered to be fall within it.
Okay, so what you're saying is this is primarily geared towards business and not for individual property owners, persons that hold individual property. It has to have some element of business.
Business or civic organizations and municipalities are generally the ones that benefit most from the tax credits and the grants. There are some grants and tax credits available through largely Efficiency Vermont for residential property owners. But to the best of my recollection off the top of my head, that's really the only one that is available to homeowners.
Okay. And out of curiosity, what is the third center this is available to? Center of town, West Townsend, and what's the third location?
So the other one would be the Harmonyville area. And in talking to Richard Amore about that particular area, it would essentially center around both the store and what was West Townsend Furniture, and probably also include the supervisory union offices. But it really wouldn't go much beyond that, because again, essentially it would have to be easily traveled or easy to walk to, unless you had sidewalks that extended further beyond that original spot. And also they consider kind of the the historic element of, in terms of the settlement of those areas. And
Is there any benefit, or I guess I would ask this first, has there been any contact with the people that the Harmonyville area would focus on to have this designation? Has any of them contacted you?
in Harmonyville, no. And as of right now, because you have to file, different applications or a different application for each individual village.
Yeah.
Right now, West Townsend is the one that we're focusing on, because they contacted us about possibly having this in place. Besides the West River Community Project, if this were to be approved, we also are going to be reaching out to members of the church, to Al Litchfield, to all the other people that would essentially be included within the boundary lines, to let them know that, this is being pursued and, what benefits would apply to them, or that they could possibly use the grants and stuff for.
What are the benefits that they could be applied to them, Brandon?
So for civic organizations, there's really kind of like a long list of grant opportunities that they can apply for, and they vary in terms of the money allowed. But some of them help to do things like improve the property. I mean, essentially the point of the Village Center program is to revitalize the buildings and existing structures that are already there. And it gives them the opportunity to have money that wouldn't necessarily either otherwise be available or maybe harder to appropriate to pursue those projects. So for some of the buildings, for example, ADA, upgrades is one example of a grant that could be possibly utilized by both, the church and the West Townsend Country Store. There's grants for, walking trails and things of that nature. There's grants for, I don't want to say internet access, but for essentially, technology improvements. So it does cover a wide variety of things that, municipality, the West Townsend Country Store, and also the church could pursue if they want to apply for the grants and obtain funding.
Anybody else have a comment for Brandon or a question? Allison, go ahead.
Who sets these boundary lines? Are they designated by some other entity, or can the boundaries of this town center, the town of West Townsend, be extended in either direction? Could it possibly encompass West River Trail or lead up to that? And are there any grants available for sidewalk?
So as far as sidewalks, there are grants available for sidewalks. So that is one of the things that's available because it's under the accessibility portion of the Village Center program. As far as the boundaries and where they exist or how they're set, essentially the Village Center board, which is what Richard Amore makes recommendations to and kind of sits on as well. He kind of recommends what would probably be the good anchors and what would essentially be boundaries. We then work with Windham Regional Commission to draw up a map. Now, for example, if we thought that there was really a business or something else beyond that should really be incorporated, we could make the case to the Village Center Designation Board and lobby for that to be included. And then it's up to them as to whether or not they would ultimately approve that specific piece. For example, with the last application that we filed, it goes kind of up to Grace Cottage on one end and down to the garage if you're heading, down towards Harmonyville, and also out to Jeffers. We tried to include Valley Cares, but that wasn't really, it was a relatively new business, and also the accessibility, being able to walk from there to the center of town was considered too far of a distance for the board, even though, they also do a lot of good in the community. So that was not kind of included as within the boundaries.
Brandon, just so I understand this board that you're talking about, who constitutes this board? Is this a state board? Is this?
It is a state board, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay. Any other questions for Brandon?
If I could just put a point of clarification.
Go ahead.
The village center designation is a fairly lengthy application that needs to be put together. The planning commission is the one that has done this for the Townshend village and would be doing it for the West Townshend area as well. It is a state board and state designation. And as far as what grants may be available, it isn't something that's used as a catch-all. When often Montpelier, they're doing various grants, they will often designate that one of the requirements be that it is an existing village center designation. The funds are usually for community development or economic development. And that's trying to enhance the traditional community centers within the state. So what we're looking for today, in order for it to proceed, one of the requirements is that the select board in the town endorse the application or endorse the planning commission to prepare an application to go to the community development board for their hearing and approval of a village center designation.
Okay. Is there any benefit, so that we're not 6 months from now revisiting this thing for Harmonyville, to include Harmonyville or do an application for Harmonyville at the same time?
It's a separate application for each area. And we looked at doing all three at one time and decided that given the amount of time that goes into it, we would start with the Townshend village, which was the larger one and the most obvious one to begin with. We are now moving on to West Townshend based on there being an interest from that community to have it available to them. There's not a real advantage of doing them simultaneously. It is an individual application. Might save Brandon and I a trip to wherever the hearing is, but that would be it.
Okay. Any other questions for either Brandon or Andy about this?
You are unmuted.
I have two questions, Sherwood.
Go ahead, Steve.
The church in West Townsend has been mentioned in this conversation, and with the separation of church and state, what benefits would the church get through this grant process?
Well, I would have to look at all the grants that are available, Steve. But there are a few grants that can be made available to specific organizations. Again, just going back to when we kind of put the application together for the village, one of the things that the church there was looking to do was make some renovations to, I don't know if it was the parsonage or there was some other area that they wanted to make improvements for, and under the provisions of by having the village center designation, they would have been allowed to apply for grants that applied to civic organizations to possibly obtain funding.
Okay, my second question is in regards to the West Townsend store. Now, if they were to apply for ADA grant money, that would only cover first floor activities. When the thrift store is on the second floor, I don't go in that store. I'm not aware if there's an elevator in there or not, but would they qualify for ADA grants if it could only handle one floor and not two floors?
As far as the ADA grants, I don't think it limits it to the number.
Brandon, hold on a second. Steve, I'm going to mute your link because we can't hear what he's saying. All right. Okay, Brandon, go ahead.
So as far as I'm aware of, it doesn't really, kind of have any limitations as far as the amount of floors. There are things that are available for ADA compliance. So, I mean, that could, I believe, potentially apply to, an elevators or, kind of a lift like the one that we have in Town Hall. So, but I don't think there are any limitations as far as to what floors it covers. I think it's really the buildings and properties themselves.
Okay. Allison, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
I guess since we're talking about grants, I think that's interesting. I'm just curious as to how in any way this would mean anything for private ownership. Like if somebody owns their own building or their own property, do they then have to upkeep their buildings, or is there any requirements that is like maybe undisclosed that business owners or people who own these businesses that aren't maybe necessarily civically owned but privately owned need to uphold? Like, do you have to have an elevator? Are those things required, or are they like leisure or something else? I'm just curious if there's anything that the individuals that live within that jurisdiction may now need to sort of uphold standards. I guess I'm just curious of.
No, not that I'm aware of. I think as of right now, we've had the village center designation in place for the village of Townshend, and it hasn't really been utilized that much as of yet. But there really have been no requirements that have changed as far as property owners, business owners, or the municipality here. Really what this does is kind of, open up the opportunity to, obtain grants and tax credits to make improvements to the buildings, that might not otherwise be available, or that you would probably have to raise either privately or, possibly raise through taxes or something like that if it was, for the municipality or something like that. But, as far as business owners or anything like that having certain requirements placed on them, just because the village center designation is now in place, I'm not aware of any that exist. I mean, there might be some criteria that they have to meet within the funding and the scope of a specific project that they're applying for, but as just in terms of having the village center designation in place, there's no real requirements or anything that they need to meet just for it being in place.
Just so the rest of the board is aware, we have, with the village designation for Townshend Center, a list of grants that are available and agencies that have funding that can be put into play. And I can have Carla email you that input so that you have further information. Is there any other questions for either Brandon or Andy?
What are the benefits for the town, if there is any? And how long, and my other question would be, how long has the town of Townshend been in that registry?
So I believe it was 2019 we obtained village center designation for the village of Townshend. We went through a process then, which included an informational meeting at town hall. We had to do a walkthrough at that point, which this time around we won't necessarily need to do, and I think that's part of their COVID protocol. But essentially, the benefits to the town itself and to West Townshend, if it were to be put in place there, is to be allowed to apply for grant money for a variety of things that are on the list, which could then help make improvements to existing buildings. For example, there are a lot of grants that relate to municipalities. Some of them are for things like ADA compliance. Some of them are for historic structures. Both of which Town Hall and the West Townsend Country Store both fall within that category. So there's a very lengthy list of grants that people could apply for and that would fall within. And if they are able to get money for that, for a project that they have in mind, then they could then make those improvements with state funding, and it would not have to be privately raised, or it wouldn't have to, in the case of municipality, it wouldn't have to essentially be raised by taxes or some other means. So that's probably the largest benefit I would say to towns that have this designation in place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Herb, you'll have to hit *9. I see your hands up if you have a question. Or *6, excuse me. *6 will get you off mute.
You are unmuted.
Yeah, that West Townsend Village District is a historic district.
It is.
It was anyway.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So you got to be awful careful what you do with grant money, because you've got to keep it in historic, not just go ahead and build a building.
And that's true. With any historic structure and with any historic district, they would the people making the improvements would have to fall within those historic guidelines for the register. And they would have to be conscious of that when they proceeded. Having Village Center in place really only helps them obtain the funding for what they are trying to do. But they do have to fall within, the guidelines of a historic district or a historic building if they're going to proceed with that project.
Any other comments or questions for Brandon or Andy? Herb, I still see that you've got your hand up. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to accept the Planning Commission's request to move forward on Village Center designation for the West Townsend Village.
You are unmuted.
Moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And there's no abstentions. Okay. Go ahead with it. See where you get. We have another article or another thing to talk about before our executive session, and it's simply to let you know that B, under new business, the appointment of a floodplain administrator is going to be tabled. This is a much more in-depth conversation that has to be looked at, and the Planning Commission may be able to help out with this. I think in the past, Alyssa Sabeto from Windham Regional is taking care of this for us, but it seems that that's not the case this year. So Andy has told me it's on the topics to discuss for their meeting, which is tomorrow. Andy, is your meeting tomorrow?
Yes, we have it on our agenda to talk about it tomorrow. And Carl was kind enough to get us the 1988 floodplain ordinance or bylaw, so we have that to review.
Did you get the email from me about?
I did.
Okay, we don't need to go over that then.
And Andy, I just want to make mention that we did look deeper into the ordinance folder, and that was the most recent thing that we found that wasn't related to BEMA specifically with Irene.
Okay. Well, I mean, 33 years is probably not a bad time that we at least review it.
Yeah. Herb, did you have something to say? *6, Irv, if you had a comment.
You are unmuted.
Go ahead, Irv.
I have nothing more.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so at this point, I'd entertain a motion to move into executive session to discuss personnel issues under 1 VSA 313A3.
You are unmuted.
So moved.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I need more.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All that I need. Okay. We have recessed from executive session. There is nothing that we can report due to the being a personnel issue. We do have one further issue to bring up, and this is more along the lines of a complaint that's been heard. And basically what it is there is personal property in the basement of the town hall that belongs to the former town clerk, and the complaint is that it should not be there without any further. I'd entertain a motion to send the former clerk a letter expressing our desire to have that stuff removed forthwith. And
Can we give a timeline?
well, let me get to the request, and then we'll go into discussion about that, afterwards. Okay, so what I'm going to do is request a motion from the members to send a letter to the former town clerk to remove the equipment that is stored in the basement of the town hall, and we can discuss timelines when we get to that point. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and it's been seconded. Now we'll move into discussion. Haley, you said something about a time frame?
Yes. What do we think is an appropriate time? 2 weeks, 4 weeks?
Rob?
1.
Steve, do you have anything?
I think 30 days would be more than fair.
Okay.
It's already had 4, 5, 6 years.
Okay, so we have a motion and we've had discussion to send the former town clerk a letter requesting her remove her personal property from town hall within 30 days from tomorrow, when the notice is given out. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Been a long one, and I hope the next one's shorter.
So moved.
Have a good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.